All right, I see that it is recording. So good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Fun fact, today's my birthday, so thanks for celebrating with me today, guys. We will have a meeting today. Well, stuff's not in the field. We're taking a different spin on the current agronomy topics, and we will be focusing today about data-driven decisions and what kind of data can Jim and Dustin and I supply you? What are we looking at? How do we move the portfolio forward? And kind of, it's a little peel back the curtain, right, guys? That's kind of what we're shooting for today. So, Jim, why don't you slide through? That's our agenda. And I do have a tricky trivia question for you. If any of you were on as Jim and I were talking, you can go ahead to the trivia question. How many plots for DEKALB, Asgrow, and Alloy do we have in the state of Iowa in our data system for 2025? And I do have this broken out for corn and for soybeans. So this is just shoot out a number. We can decide if we're going to play prices right rules. So whoever's closest underneath the total is going to win. Oh, no.
I was hitting admit on the lobby and nobody was seeing that, right?
Nope. I think we did get some questions or some answers. Scott was quick. Oh, he is fast.
Scott, very attentive.
He is. There's points for being attentive. There's points. So yeah, Scott's right. He saw it. It's not a secret. So for 2025, the data that we are going to pull for the state of Iowa, we have 326 reps for corn, for DEKALB, and 226 reps for you can shoot ahead to slide, Jim, for soybeans. So now we label this reps instead of locations because especially in my territory, I do have some where it's the same location, but we have different management strategies on the same rep on the same set. So that gives us 4 in one location. So hence why we say reps instead of locations here. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this. I have a map that even shows the locations that we have for plots this year. But real quick, before we dig into plots, Jim, if you could hit forward 2 slides, we're going to go into current topics. I want to just shout this out. Oh no, it didn't go. Oh, it didn't update in time. That's a bummer. I'm going to drop this in the chat just so everybody can see it. It is an image of the solar warning that we have going on right now. So many of you, I hope everybody saw the Northern Lights last night. It was so great. One of the implications of such a strong storm, we are at a G4 warning level. This could impact some satellite signals. Generally speaking, in the last year we saw 2 events of this level that did impact agricultural GPS in planting and harvest. Now we're a little bit later now, so that's great. Generally speaking, John Deere systems are not as impacted. They have a different way of speaking to their satellites. Someone smarter than me can explain the reasoning for that. But last year we did see that ag leader Trimble case equipment was more sensitive. So if you have any applicators that are out today, I hear it's supposed to peak about midday. So if you have any applicators and they're like, what is going on? I can't find my line or it could be something totally out of their control. So I just wanted to call everybody's attention to that. And this too shall pass. It won't give us trouble for very long. But just wanted to touch base on that. Do you guys have anything else that you want to touch base on before we go into plots?
No, that's a good current topic. It still falls under the guideline of agronomic, but yeah, since we don't have a growing crop, that is as current as you can get. So that's
we had some pretty big issues since I worked in digital last year. We had a lot of data issues flowing into climate where the combines did not know where they were. from a similar level of storm. So if you have an applicator out there, but bonus points if you put in the chat your pictures of the Northern Lights, because I can't get enough Northern Lights pictures. So
hey, I'm gonna give a shout out to the trivia winners for the year, because this is the last official DAACAT. So going back to April, Kyle Doonan and Scott O'Connell back to back, and Scott gets it today. I mean, hey, use all your resources, whatever it takes. He was paying attention, so we'll give it to him. Going into June, Jeff Blauette and Kaya Thomas was back to back there in late June and early July. And then getting into August, Jeff Grandgeorge, and then Peter Buchan, and then back to back, David Simonson. So that is our Hall of Fame for the trivia winners for this year. Congrats to all. And like I always say, fabulous prizes are coming, and there will be prizes. I mean, isn't anything one standard, but for each area, which a lot of them happen to be in our area, I will be the one providing prizes. Don't expect them tomorrow, but they will get to you. I promise.
Awesome. Well,
thanks for playing.
Yeah, we appreciate your participation, even for our silly questions to start. Mm-hmm. We're going to jump into plots, guys. And so, like I said before, we're going to try to help you understand the data that we're looking at as technical agronomists, what we're trying to supply to you guys, to our field teams, to make us a better team, to make us more successful, to make you and your growers more successful. So we're going to talk about plots, and this all starts with you guys, right? These are single locations that are data-driven decisions powered by you, is what my next slide will say, unless my slides are late on my side. We need you guys to be putting in plots. That is the most important thing. So Jim, could you go back one slide? Mm-hmm. I think my computer's being funny today, Max, I tell you what. So, we start in field, right? This is an image of one of Jim's climate plots. We put it in climate, but we aggregate it. This is an image of all the different locations that are currently in the system. Now I know in my territory, I have to enter some today. So there will be more dots on this map, but we translate that. That's a lot of dots just for Iowa. And the picture, well, I'm looking at it on the right, I guess. That national map, that is the data set that DEKALB is able, and this is just the corn setting. This is the data set that DEKALB is using to power the decisions that your field teams are making, that the breeding, helping to supply the breeding organization with correct information. I did not get the number of national data points, but it's a lot. It's an amazingly powerful data machine, but it all starts with you guys supplying good data. So I want to give a shout out to each and every one of you that is putting out a plot. We know that it's hard, it's time consuming, it's usually windy and dirt is getting in your teeth in the spring and you have to stop what you're doing. It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference not only for your selling teams, but for the organization as a whole. So thank you for doing that. Keep doing that. If you're not doing that and you want to make some changes or something like that, Dustin and Jim and I are always around to help start that process for you, for a farmer, however that might look. So we can go on to the next slide. And Jim, you're a little bit more familiar with the back end of the system. Can you give an overview of what we call PTP is our system in there?
Product trials positioning. So we use PTP as our holding warehouse, so to speak. All the plots end up there. Of course, we can look at individual plots, a lot of different ways. Plethora of ways to look at it. Balance summaries, which I like, where you're looking at several products that are all in the same field together, so it's truly balanced. Comparison reports. We can pull one hybrid against a bunch of hybrids. We can pull DEKALB versus Pioneer. We can pull DEKALB versus DEKALB. Any really way you want to, and any geography you want to. Also multi-year. You look at this year. What's the number one thing, Dora and Dustin, that really actually drove yield response this year, if you can narrow it
Yeah, I
down to
know.
one.
Plant health, I mean, was the biggest thing in Southern
Yeah,
Rust score, and it's nice to have this system to be able to look back and combine years and look at, multi-year history instead of just trying to make decisions on this year.
right. Yeah, yeah. And, I mean, Southern Rust, yeah, it's real, but you don't want to base every decision on that. And you kind of know the geographies where Southern Rust was the heaviest, and especially as you got to get up into Minnesota, not as much Southern Rust. So it's good to look at that data. That really probably was a little more true to life as far as a moisture spread on what you typically see, but also maybe just an average or below average amount of Southern Rust. Um, and then there's a lot of agronomic filtering that we can do, and we'll show some examples of that. As far as by planting date, by crop rotation, by soil type, by drainage classification. Um, Basically, the type of data polls that could keep us busy for months. And I think all three of us love to run data, and we're glad to do it. But also, we have some other responsibilities, so we can't do it 24/7. But if you do have specific things that you want us to pull, we're always glad to do that. And right now we still have data coming in that we're getting to the point where we kind of take what we have and start learning, because it really helps, especially on these new products with positioning. And we have the ability to pull in research trials, which is very helpful on the new products where maybe we didn't have a lot of plot seed, or we just didn't have it represented everywhere. The research data, then we can get a whole nother data set to look at. And this is an example of a balanced set, showing the number of fields, number of locations that these 5 products were together in 2025, just pulled from this year. Looking at some of these mid-maturity products and where they stack up, and the more data points you get, usually you see the yield spread get tighter, but it gives you an idea where they shake out. And then what's not shown here, of course, is the moisture and dollar return per acre. So, we can pair that with all of our data. This year, of course, that moisture spread wasn't as dramatic. So, took a little sorting out, if you're comparing maturities of, 5 or 10 days difference, usually you're seeing more of a maturity moisture spread, and not so much this year.
So here's an example. One more click. I don't know why my top didn't show up here. This is an example of like what the dashboard looks like and what we're running. So this is an example of what my team wanted to see. I did a freshman class poll, right? So I'm able to say 24 and 25. All the other DEKALB products we have, Pioneer, Brevant, Hogemeyer. Then I actually, if there's one more dot, and I don't know why it's showing up, I say the RM spread I want, the minimum number of comparisons to really nail down. And then this is in the state of Iowa for, like I said, 2 years. It's an amazing amount of data points that we're able to do. And like Jim said, we could spend all day doing this. And sometimes it doesn't tell us anything. But one of the reasons I chose to show this slide is that we can see that the breeding organization made a choice that is going to be successful in disease years. Look at that 8.7 bushel advantage for the freshman class against those big groups of other products. That's amazing. And we're able to visualize that in this way. It takes us, there's lots of levers, right? I feel like a little bit like Dr. Frankenstein, right? We're pulling all these levers all the time to try to get a specific picture. But this is one that I really like. So this is something I come back to when looking at new products. And then, Jim, if you go to the next slide, we're going to show you some of the views that you might not often see from us. So this is something that I like to take a peek at as a newer TA trying to get a feel for new products. This is our new product 11162. And this is a heat map feature that we have in our tool that says, where was it happiest? Those dark green circles are where it's 15 bushel above the average of the compares. I thought this was interesting because I said, like Dustin said, plant health. Overlay that with where we saw Southern Rust, and we can see that this product really shined in areas where we needed plant health. And I think that that's a really fun way to visualize things. And we can visualize it in different ways. We could do groups this way. And you can zoom out nationally even and see where else are people planting this product. And sometimes that's just fun to know and compare notes on with other TAs. But I thought that this one was really interesting with overlapping the Southern Rust map.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have anything?
Well, just the fact you could probably fill in every county, right?
Yeah.
Well, I see that Ida County is not filled in there, and it's driven me nuts all year because I'm pretty sure I turned in Ida County once myself.
No.
So I must not have.
I think I think most people or most areas just didn't turn it in because it was a given.
Yes. So this is another, like Jim said before, we can pull out some other levers. This is seeding rate. So this is a product that the top one is a Smart Stack Pro 11303. Now this did not have plot seed in our part of the world, but it's something that my team to the south, we are going to have some limited bags this year, even without plot seed. So I'm going over to Illinois and grabbing plot data so that I can learn that little bit of placement. And this is a product that doesn't really want to be put into the ground first in really cold soils and is a more racehorse runner, high yield environment type scenario. Well, I can kind of confirm that here with the data that I'm seeing. It's responding to population. It wants to have that full stand. And I can see that I can confirm to dealers and FSRs, hey, this stand establishment is worth it. This extra population is worth it. Look at the return we have on your investment in our plots, and not just a small number of comparisons either. This is against many, many products that we're able to get this snapshot.
Yeah, then that one on the bottom, drainage class name, and that's all our plots are geo-referenced, and so we have a good feel. Some years this is going to have a bigger influence, obviously, than others, but you try to learn, especially on these new products, where exactly is it fitting in, and that's where this type of soil type data can help. Stability graphs, in my mind, is a excellent tool to be able to find out where does it like that environment, high yield environment, low yield environment. And of course, you always have to know, what is driving the yield. In a lot of cases this year, in the lower yield environments, it was dictated by Southern Rust. A lot of years, the lower yield environment is dry weather, drought. A year ago, the low yield environment was generally too wet. So, you kind of have to know that background, but it does help find out. This is 10711, a new one for us. And, it really rocketed up as we got into that 230, 235 environment and higher, and really showed a large advantage compared to this would be the competition in this case as we got into that high yield environment. I was really happy there. Scattergrams, another way we can look at it. This is 11010 compared to other DEKALB hybrids. Gives you a quick snapshot of, okay, we got 11010 as the bullseye. How do some other products compare yield-wise? The y-axis would be yield. X-axis is your moistures. So 10769 was out yielding it by about 3 bushel, and then 3/4 of a point drier. 11442, essentially the same yield statistically, but carrying 1.5 more moisture. 11235, another new one. Pretty good yield advantage, but carrying 2.3 roughly points more moisture. So gives you a quick snapshot on product comparisons that way.
Sometimes when you hear us, we're like, well, it acts like it. We listed a 110, but it might be more like a 108. That's the kind of picture we're looking at to build that information in our mind, along with walking the plots and stuff like that throughout the season.
Mm-hmm. Another example, and this is what we call banding, but we can band, basically take planting dates and say, okay, this April 1st to April 25th, which is the case in this scenario, would be considered early. And anything after that would be late. And so this is just 6 of our different hybrids and how they compared to each other at those 2 planting windows. New one, 103.63, and see where it's at as far as in this earlier window. It does have very good emergence. 104.14, a little slower out of the ground, a little bit more of a disadvantage. I'll flip to the next one. So this would be the later planting dates. Still see some of the same type of rankings, but the 103.63 didn't have as much advantage compared to these other hybrids once that planting date moved a little bit later. 104.14 still wasn't winning compared to these other DEKALB hybrids, but that gap narrowed. So slightly the later planting dates did help that one out. So we can tease some things out just to help explain or help really dig into some of the product performances and why certain products did well and some other ones not so much. And I guess that kind of leads into just a general discussion, as far as a lot of talk this year on, especially social media buzz on corn planting dates. I mean, soybean planting dates as well, but some areas they really thought, boy, the later planting dates in corn seem to be overall better. As I pull data, and I tried to pull data by planting date, and as a big group, as a meta-analysis, I haven't seen that in our area, but I would be curious, Nora and Dustin, some of your comments on maybe any trends or thoughts going forward, or what we learned from this year on some of those planting dates.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, but I guess I have not seen that either, Jim. I guess the biggest trend that probably has been the biggest yield advantage on beans is early beans planted early is the one that I've been hearing the most as I've been talking with customers and dealers of where they've seen the biggest yields. And when I think about, deciding to go to the field in the spring, I guess I've always been a big proponent of putting beans in the ground early. I mean, just trying to keep those in vegetative stage as long as possible, getting as many nodes before, June 21st. I really like early planted beans. A little more forgiving too, and some maybe more challenging conditions in the spring where corn, you really need to look at, soil conditions, warmer temps, because you want that picket stain.
I think that's part of it. One thing that, and I put some slides at the end, but I bet they're not in there because my geo storm slide wasn't in there. One thing that we're discussing in the Southern Territories is we are so efficient at planting. We are so efficient at planting anymore. We are just the masters. How does that very narrow planting window impact how all of the fields handle these winds and heat in the fall, right? And there is some discussion of how do we need to manage that? Do we think, now this is 2 years in a row of heat and wind in the fall, okay? So what are the Vegas odds? And I think I said this last time, but when I do a post-harvest meeting, I'm really tempted to make it Vegas themed because I feel like, it's all about what odds do you want to place on things. And there are some growers thinking, hey, do I need, depending on the spring, do I maybe need to avoid planting everything in 4 days or 7 days? Is there a benefit to trying to spread some of that out to how we handle the winds and the heat in the fall? Now, we don't have a lot of plot data to help with that. Jim and Dustin, I agree. I don't see a lot of that in the data that we're looking at, but I think that there are going to be operations where that may be worth a discussion of, all right, maybe it's just a maturity management. Maybe we're extending our maturities on either side to create a bigger window if we want to manage our planting. But I think that the planting date trend also translates to how we're going to handle that later weather and what our bet is on that later weather coming our way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of good points, and I would agree. I mean, if conditions are right and it's April 20th, I don't think we're going to sit idly by. So,
no.
We've talked about that emergence risk forecast tool that's gotten better every year, so that can help avoid some of those maybe potential higher risk planting dates. But if it's good, it's go time. But I do agree, Nora, that and I hear that trend from growers and dealers, really trying to spread the maturity out a little bit more than they have in the past. Probably more so on beans, beans, that discussion, trying to catch the harvest moisture at 12 or 13% if we can. We hopefully can help ourselves out by spreading out the maturities. But even on corn, these rapid dry down years, we're not going to solve everything. But if we do mix in a little bit more earlier hybrids, because the trend has clearly been away from earlier hybrids the last few years, but I had some early hybrids that did well this year. I think some of them beat the heavy southern rust, heavy tar spot late season, maybe beat some of the heat. And so we've got some pretty good yielding early products, and to spread out that risk, but also spread out that harvest logistics. I do hear that as the trend as far as more of a
I do
spread.
think there are some success stories, especially down south for me, of some guys that took the management strategy in their logistics. They said, I'm willing to go back and forth. Now, not every operation can do that for whatever reason. But there may be little things like that where I'm going to go get a bunch of corn. I'm going to go get beans. I'm going to go get some corn that maybe we should go get. Oh, I have some later beans. It could be things that sound a little crazy now. It could be things like that are also a component of helping us manage that dry down window.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, you bet. Well, good discussion. A lot of those type of discussions will take place over the winter, especially as we analyze more data. To finish up with just a couple things. Rootworm. We did have this in the newsletters. Hopefully you did see that, but it's been interesting. Every year we've looked at trait studies at our research farms. This would be from the Sac City Research Farm, 6 years corn on corn, where you've got the double pro. So the basically untreated, showing 1.5 node injury score in a year where I would say rootworm pressure overall was average, but I think a lot of the feeding was masked by root regeneration. We had moisture, also late feeding. We really continue to push that life cycle back. Certainly we ended up with the beetles most everywhere, but we just didn't always see some of the results of the feeding. Soil applied insecticide on that double pro certainly did very well on the node injury protection. Not a huge yield response, 6 bushel, but again, probably masked a lot of that feeding because of the moisture. And then down with the other traits, the Smart Stacks did a very good job. Chrome right in there too, just a little higher in Smart Stacks. And Smart Stacks Pro, Vorseed, very similar on node injury score. VT4 Pro, also did very well on the node injury score. You can kind of see where the yields are influenced, of course, by genetics, but you can kind of see where things lined up here with the 114-42 Smart Stacks. A little different story on the root lodging portion. Double pro, as you would expect, very high on the root lodging, even though it didn't take the huge yield hit. But the double pro with the soil applied insecticide, good node injury score, but sure showed some lodging. And then the rest of the traded stuff, pretty good, pretty solid there. VT4 Pro, a little bit higher. You do have a hybrid influence there, but we know VT4 Pro is a watch out if it's heavy pressure, which I would consider this heavy pressure here. So yield wise, it was able to do very well. Node injury score do well, but still showed some of that lodging. So another year to break apart rootworm. We ended up with a lot of beetles late season, like I mentioned. And so, we know the pressure is there for next year to deal with, as it pretty much always is.
I think your conversation of the rain forgives a lot of evils. And if I remember correctly, when Ben pulled his beetle traps on these fields, he was numbering beetles in the hundreds.
Yes.
Like there was and don't let the yields fool y'all. There was very intense pressure, but the plants were able to compensate greatly, which we're thankful for. But don't make sure you give credit to the weather.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, finishing up here, since we're at 8:30, just flash up a couple yield results that have come in here over the last week or 10 days. Corn on corn plot, always like corn on corn plots. Always looking for more of them, but like we were talking as far as some of those maturity trends, this year, it wasn't always as clear cut with fuller seasons having an advantage, and 101.33, which does very well, especially corn on corn, did happen to top this one. But you kind of see some results that jump around. That new 107.11, certainly it's going to be a nice corn on corn option. This one's over in Kossuth County, corn soy rotation. A lot of products, in that mid maturity that done very well. Seems like every year there's somewhat that sweet spot. I don't know if that's the sweet spot just because of the germplasm or because of the year, but the more data we pull apart, the more we can answer that question. But pretty good package of products, especially when you look at the whole portfolio as compared to the Brevant in this particular plot. And we are right there. Joel's always good on asking a question. I think I saw about the Iowa State
insecticide trials. I have not seen anything.
I have not either.
Is that something they maybe release for ICM conference next month?
A lot of times they sure talk about it there. I don't know if it gets released ahead of time or not, but
yeah. Oh, there's Ben. Yep. He says he had 198 beetles per sticky trap. Extra trivia question. Does anyone remember what threshold is for a week? 14, y'all. 14. He had 198.
Pretty high pressure, but rainfall.
Slightly above. Slightly above.
Yep, just a little bit.
Well, that's where we wanted to wrap up. Thank everyone for being on, and thanks for your input. Always appreciate that, and for what you do for us. But certainly, if there's other questions, put in the chat or to come off mute, we'd take them.
I hope that this insight helps you all feel more confident in the data that you are seeing all of us present. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. Like you said earlier, Nora, it's nice, when you're thinking about putting in plots, it can be a little bit more work in a busy time of year, but it's much appreciated and helps us figure out where to place these products and really highlight performance.